This is the 1908 Ohio Electric Railroad Bridge, one of the largest dirt-filled reinforced concrete bridges in the country. I'm Darren, and this is the Industrial Revolution. So yes, you actually heard that right. This bridge was intentionally built, filled with dirt. We'll come more to that in a minute, but let's talk about what it's doing here in the first place. This is an interurban bridge. Interurbans, for those not familiar with them, sit somewhere kind of between streetcars and regular mainline railroads. They still do exist and are still used in a number of places. For example, New York City has a strong interurban network that connects out to the suburbs, but a lot of cities have lost them. This one here actually, at one point before it was shut down, ended up being one of the longest electric railroads in the entire country too. Traveling from Toledo, Ohio to our north, major glass city, down through Lima, Ohio, home of Lima Locomotive Works, and I'm connecting down to Dayton and Columbus and Cincinnati to the Ohio River.
Interurbans were usually, but not always, light electric railroads. They usually focused more on passenger service than freight, but they'd also handle light freight duties. While the main lines focused on moving huge amounts of freight and cargo and long-distance passenger travel, the interurbans really picked up everything else. I'm here at the Lost Railroad Museum in Grass Lake, Michigan, where they're dedicated to preserving the history of these lines. My great-grandmother once told me that, when she was much younger, her and some friends would take the interurban into Detroit for the day, quite possibly on one of these very cars. It was about a 60-mile trip, and today we'd just jump in the car and not think twice about it. But what if you didn't have a car? At the peak of interurbans, most people didn't have cars, and your options were to walk, to ride a horse, or to take the mainline train if there even was one from your town. Walking or riding a horse was a 3 to 4 day trip each way. That's why, before the interurbans, many people had never really been that far from home before. Mainline railroads were good if your town had a station, but there likely weren't very many passenger trains going through each day, so they were certainly inconvenient, and they were also expensive. The interurban solved all that. You might have a train coming by every hour, all day long. The fares were low, and while not providing all the comforts of long-distance passenger lines, the cars were more comfortable than city streetcars, and the trip would only take an hour or two. It was to serve this need that the Lima-Toledo Traction Company built this impressive viaduct called the Ohio Electric Railroad Bridge, or the Waterville Interurban Viaduct. They ran their rail line parallel to the B&O Railroad steam rail line near here, but as we discussed, they were really serving different customers. Ohio was, and is, heavily industrialized in the cities, and heavily agricultural in between. Interurbans really complemented the main lines well. They connected all the small towns to the big cities using about 2,800 miles of track here in Ohio, and connecting with nearly every town with a population over 5,000 people throughout the entire state. The bridge itself, which is now located adjacent to Farnsworth Metro Park, was fairly innovative when it was built. As a dirt-filled, reinforced concrete bridge, it did partially mimic the designs of earlier stone viaducts, which were also sometimes filled with dirt. This not only sped construction and cut costs, but also helped to absorb some of the vibrations from passing trains, reducing the stresses on the structure. At 1,220 feet long, or about 372 meters long, the 12 reinforced concrete arches made it one of the longest dirt-filled reinforced concrete bridges built in the country at that time. Reinforced concrete was just becoming popular for construction in the early 1900s, and it was way faster and way cheaper than building this viaduct in stone would have been, even with plenty of limestone available here locally. Just how close was the limestone? Well, in this photo, you can see the limestone quarry here in the foreground, running right alongside the Miami and Erie Canal, and right at the end of the viaduct. The canal's business was already fading fast by the time the viaduct was built, but the quarry here is actually still operating today. You start by building up wooden forms, including the forms for the arches. Since you're doing this right in an active river, you have to build small cofferdams around the base of every pier. But fortunately, during the summer, the water here can get pretty low and you're right on top of bedrock. I was walking out here in the river last summer as I filmed underneath the bridge. Just don't try to do that in the spring or after heavy rains. With the forms in place, you install the reinforcing bars and pour the concrete. Once cured, you pull off the wooden forms and you're done. Just fill it in with dirt, add the tracks, and start running your trains. And run trains they did. This line was extremely popular for several decades, connecting from Toledo down to Dayton, Columbus, and Cincinnati. The construction of this bridge wasn't all good, however. There's a dark side too that I think we need to discuss. That large stone island in the middle of the river that they used for one of the piers, today that's called Roche de Boeuf, and it was an important site for the Pokagon band of the Potawatomi tribe, going back longer than anyone remembers. Just before the nearby Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1794, warriors from a coalition of tribes met here. Local residents considered it an important feature as well, even independent of its Native American significance. The railroad reassured residents, saying, quote, "We're going to be 6 feet away. You don't have to worry." And, quote, "In fact, that rock will be a focal point and people will enjoy riding out and looking at it for historical value." With assurances that the site would be protected and the project approved, the railroad quickly blasted away about a third of Roche de Boeuf to make a convenient pier for the viaduct. A local newspaper, the Toledo News-Bee, described that act as a triumph of commercialism. I'm not so sure that people today would be so generous.
So in 1937, the Interurban Railroad here shut down. The roads had been paved, cars were becoming more popular, trucks for shipping were becoming more popular. They just weren't sending as much freight by rail anymore, and they really weren't shipping as much, passengers by rail anymore. And because of that, there just wasn't a demand for the interurbans here. Well, it did get a brief reprieve in 1941. About 2 miles downriver is the next nearest bridge. It's a car and pedestrian bridge on Mechanic Street, 2 miles downriver here in Waterville. And in 1941, it collapsed. During World War II, so there wasn't a huge appetite to build new bridges at that point. The next nearest bridge, 10 miles upriver here in Grand Rapids, Ohio. That's a long ways out of your way, especially during World War II when they were rationing gasoline and tires to convince people to not drive. So the Interurban Bridge here was opened to car traffic, with single lane car traffic. So it's a one-lane bridge. And that lasted until 1946, when the war was over and they replaced the bridge over on Mechanic Street. Well, in 1983, the Ohio Department of Transportation deemed this bridge to be unsafe. If you've watched the video up to this point, you can probably guess why. In 2021, they actually put it up for sale. No one bought it. They tried to auction it off, and they had no qualified bidders who were also able to come up with the money to restore it to safety and provide sufficient insurance. So it's scheduled for demolition in fall of 2024. Well, I'm out here filming this right at the end of 2025. It didn't get demolished yet. And the reason for that is that the Ohio Department of Transportation, the City of Waterville, and Native American groups in the area agreed to delay the demolition and look at other options for this bridge to keep it here, preserve the heritage of the area. Hopefully they are able to save this and put it back into use for pedestrians and bicyclists. And if they do, it'll continue to represent the Industrial Revolution.
Hey, wait just a second before you go. I need your help to keep the channel growing here. First thing you can do is really easy. Just like, subscribe, share this video. Tell all your friends about it. That spreads the word. YouTube will see that and we'll show this to more people. Commenting more than just 2 or 3 words. YouTube says that's the most important thing you can get. It's the best kind of user interaction there is. So you can comment more than just 2 or 3 words. Also, if you're able to and are interested in helping out financially, these are pretty expensive videos to film, a lot of travel costs on top of the hours of work I do here. You can help out at patreon.com/industrialrevolution or become a member here on YouTube or a single contribution through Super Thanks. Also have an affiliate store. If you click that, anything you buy there, a percentage of that purchase will come to help fund the channel. Thanks for your help and look forward to seeing you next week.